We're going over it. It's content, baby. It's content. So, folks, there's a guy named Matt Walsh. And he has some thoughts about Tuah girl, okay? As we all know, the woman who got famous for telling you how to spit on a dick and is for some reason becoming a media sensation. So that's what we're going to be learning. We're going to be learning about Matt Walsh's feelings about that woman. I bet you will never be able to guess what he thinks.
His 15 minutes of fame meant something, and it was pretty close to actually 15 minutes. People recognize that just because someone did something to attract attention, we didn't necessarily have to keep giving them attention for months and even years after the fact. Attracting attention was not considered an end in and of itself. And so if you were famous for any sustained period of time, it generally meant, for most of human history, honestly, that you had some identifiable talent. It meant you had a skill that most people don't possess. And that was kind of the bare minimum. But that's changed now, and fame is now unquestionably cheaper and more meaningless than it's ever been in the history of the world.
That's true. Matt Walsh used to be a daytime radio talk show host, a shock jock who did fart jokes and tasered his coworkers' asses and refereed adult baby diaper wrestling amongst men with swastika tattoos while burning books. And he got famous, so if he can do it, anyone can. I'm sure he feels a certain kinship with Tuah girl.
It takes nothing to become famous now. It doesn't mean anything.
Very knifey duck. Thank you for the $5 dono.
I will try my best not to make fun of Matt Walsh's beard because I am sure she is a nice lady. Oh no, I did the thing.
I didn't see that coming. I like that. I appreciate it.
And there's no greater evidence of this unfortunate fact than the ongoing prominence of Haley Walsh, a 21-year-old woman who, of course, became famous back in June for creating the Tuah meme. That's the most benign way I can describe her rise to fame. In another era, making a vulgar sex joke during some man-on-the-street style interview would maybe buy you a day or two of attention at most. Jay Leno would, he'd put you on his show and the crowd would laugh politely and applaud and then everyone would move on. But in 2024, making a crude sex joke in a man-on-the-street interview gets you millions of social media followers, all kinds of endorsement deals, a line of merchandise, hundreds of media appearances. And of course, inevitably now, we all knew this was coming, a podcast. Watch.
Y'all really thought I was...
Dude, why... You have less skill. Dude, Matt Walsh, you were a guy who did fart jokes on the radio and talked about how women who got sexually assaulted were drunk whores who had it coming. That's your entire persona. And then you managed to get hired by a propaganda billionaire outfit that just stuck its hand so far up your ass that it turned you into a little sock puppet for whatever corporate line they wanted you to say. And there you've been ever since. You've been making your bag doing exactly the same thing that this lady has. She's just more honest about it.
Done? I'm just getting started, baby. I'm Haley Welch. A little while ago, my life took a complete left turn and it changed forever. And along the way, I've realized that everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Well, now it's my time to talk. Check out my podcast every week, Talk Tuah, where I'm sitting down with the coolest guests and having actual conversations with them.
She's like 22 years old.
I mean, Talk Tuah is a pretty good name for the podcast, I have to admit. I hate that I have to admit that. It's clever. Can I say something else too? And no one, the guy who interviewed her when she made the Tuah comment, why isn't he famous? Who is that guy? I don't even know. I can't even picture what he looks like. I don't know his name.
Because
he's really the one who got scammed in this whole deal. Like he
got no. If he had more Riz, people would remember him, bro. He fumbled the bag. There you go. There's your answer.
Managed to create and produce one of the unfortunately, one of the most viral pieces of content of the year. That made its way into the kind of cultural zeitgeist. And he gets nothing out of it. No one even knows that guy. I mean, if I was him, I'd be pretty, bitter.
Matt, you have a platform that can reach, millions of people. You could have interviewed that guy. You could have invited him. You could have invited him on your show or learned what his name is. But instead you're complaining about him not knowing who he is. You have millions of dollars, Matt, an entire team of people. You could get him on your show.
About that. Anyway.
Why are the women who hawk Tuah on that thing? Why are they getting famous? Not the men who get hawk Tuah on, huh? It's about time those of us on the receiving end of hawk Tuah got what was coming. Got our due.
Anyway, to be as fair as possible to this whole idea.
Hawk Tuah of the world, unite! You have nothing to lose. I can't finish what I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's clear what they're going for. They're leaning into the idea that Walsh shouldn't be famous, but she is. That's why she started a company called 16 Minutes to sell her merchandise, which is obviously a play on the idea of 15 minutes of fame. So there's a whole Kardashian angle to the marketing here, where Hailey is famous for being famous, and we should all loosen up a little bit and enjoy it, I guess, is the idea. What's left unanswered in that teaser, though, is what exactly would this podcast be about? I mean, what do you have? She says that she's going to talk to the coolest people and give her own opinion in actual conversations, as opposed to what?
Okay, y'all want to know. I was going to say you have nothing to lose but your loads, and then I did not want to finish that. I couldn't. It got too funny.
Fake conversations? What do you mean? Oh, this podcast. You got to listen to this podcast. Have you heard the Talk Tuah podcast? Oh, you haven't? You got to hear this one. This one's different. She's having actual conversations. No, actual, not fake. No, they're not pretending to have it. They're actually having a conversation.
Dude, Matt Walsh is so fucking bitter that it took him 20 years to build this career that this young woman did in 3 weeks.
It might not be an interesting conversation, but it's a conversation. It's happening.
Matt, have you watched your own content?
So she's not more specific than that. Is it going to be a podcast where they just make sex jokes the whole time? Is she going to talk about jet skis and mountain biking and all the exciting stuff she's doing in the trailer there? What's the content going to be exactly? Who knows? Now, if you saw Hailey Welsh's interview with Bill Maher from a couple of...
Man, I love the extent of his observation here. What kind of content is she going to make? Well, I don't know. Moving on. What scintillating insight from Matt Walsh, one of the foremost conservative minds of our age.
DSAL River Bait People Comfy.
Mewtwo appeared. Thank you for resubscribing with Prime over on Twitch. I appreciate you.
A couple weeks ago, you probably know what, because by the way, yeah, she was interviewed by Bill Maher because she said hawk Tuah on camera, and so that means that now she needs to be interviewed by Bill Maher.
Dude, he's so fucking mad. He's so bitter. He wants to be on Bill Maher. Which honestly, Matt, you could probably just go on Bill Maher. Like he's basically a conservative. Like you could probably get like a line on with him on like, I don't know, 80% of the issues.
But if you watch that, you probably know what this podcast isn't going to be about. It's not going to be about knowing things or having any insight into anything that's happening of any significance.
Matt, your show isn't about knowing things. You don't talk about anything. Your contribution is just hatred and bigotry. You're just like, well, black people are inferior to white people every episode, or women are worse than men. Am I right, fellas? Every episode. That's you.
We can be pretty sure that from this moment alone, although there's a lot of moments like this to choose from, but watch this.
When the boys in America were going off to World War I, did they teach you in school when World War I was?
I'm sure they did, but I probably took a nap in that class.
Do you have any idea?
Let's see, I'm going to say...
God, she looks like a... Guys, just real quick.
Probably took a nap in that class.
Do you have any idea?
Just real quick, okay? One, Bill Maher is kind of creepy here, not gonna lie. Number two, she is tiny. Like... Guys... She's 22 years old. She's an adult. One of the things, if you are older than 22, okay? Okay? If you're older than 22, you look at her and you're like, nah, that she looks like a babby. Like if you're like 35, like she's too young. She's in a very different stage of her life. You know, like I feel like this really emphasizes like age dynamics and age difference dynamics to me. Like I she's an adult, I'm an adult. I couldn't date her. She's too small. She's too young. Like, she's going through completely different shit. Ugh. I'm barely older than 22 and it still feels weird. Yeah, I mean, that's also true. Like, when you're younger, like, smaller age differences seem like they matter a lot more. Yeah, Bill Maher is 3 times her age. Jesus.
Let's see, I'm going to say... is in the
1914 to 1918 was World War I. World War II was the 1940s, the first half of the 19th.
You weren't born yet.
I was not. But it's important that you know these basic markers in history.
I know I'm the grumpy old man here, but I can't. I can't even laugh at it. You're an adult. I think she's a college student, right? She went to college, probably. I don't know. And you're not sure about the century when World War I happened. Now, plenty of moments like that. You can watch the whole thing if you're so inclined to for some reason, but.
And have you seen who else gets shows, Matt? Matt, have you ever watched a Dave Rubin episode? You're gonna sit here and tell me that people who don't know shit about shit shouldn't have shows? That's like half the people who make shows for the conservative right. Like, what do you... Matt, glass houses, Matt. Your house is made out of glass. Stop throwing rocks.
Apparently, she can guess when World War I took place within about 100 years. She barely had the century down. So needless to say, this will not be a history podcast and I don't, we're not going to belabor the point, but how do you manage to make it to the age of 21 without having absorbed the basic information about the century when the world wars occurred?
Okay, well, I'm just going to throw this out there, Matt. It was over 100 years ago. 1918 was over 100 years ago. Now, I know it's a really pivotal, I studied history. I understand it's a very pivotal and important conflict in world history. That being said, it's not like World War I comes up in everyday conversation. Most people aren't going around being like, hey, remember when they used mustard gas for the first time? No. People aren't doing that. Hey, remember when there was a no man's land and they had to meticulously recreate trees out of iron during the night and then sneak them out into no man's land to operate as spy posts? No one's doing that in normal conversation if they're not autistic, Matt. Okay? I do it because I'm autistic, and I think that that's fascinating. Yeah, they would photograph trees in no man's land, okay? And they would carefully recreate it out of metal and then add an artistic veneer to paint it like the tree. And then, in the middle of the night, under the light of mortar fire and bombs and shells, they would erect the tree in no man's land, in the space between the front lines, between the trenches, and they would erect the tree, and then they would place people inside to be lookouts for the next day or two. And so they'd be in kind of this armored shell of a tree for days. Isn't that neat? I think that's cool. That's wild. Yeah. World War I was basically everyone had new modern ideas for how to conduct warfare, and they decided to throw all of those methods at the wall to see what would stick. If you're ever bored one day, look up all of the different types of tanks that they tested during World War I. It's honestly crazy. Also, Odd Spectre, thank you for resubscribing with Prime. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Military engineering in World War I was crazy. But let's get back to this. Sorry.
Even if you're not paying attention in school, it seems like just by accident you would at some point encounter that and it would seep into your brain somewhere. So this leads us to a problem: is how do you make a podcast when the host doesn't know anything at all about anything? Well, according to Yahoo, after much consideration, a genre for this podcast has been identified. Here's the headline, quote, Hawk Tuah girl Haley Welsh will give relationship pointers in new podcast Talk Tuah. Yahoo goes on to report that,
okay,
quote,
but that's what 90% of new men entering podcasting talk about. That's 90, that's the vast majority of new podcasts. It's like red pill incel content.
quote, Talk Tuah is a part of the Better banner, the media company founded by Jake Paul. It will be a weekly podcast showcasing a mix of different personalities and interviews. So this is now a very well-funded relationship podcast where the Hawk Tuah girl will be talking to guests about how to fix their problems with their boyfriends or spouses or whatever. It's launching in a few days. Now, admittedly, as of right now, it's not clear if this is just some elaborate prank. It's possible that callers are going to ask Haley Welsh what they should do in their relationship, and she's just going to respond with the same two-word catchphrase that made her famous over and over again. And the crowd will go wild because that joke just can't possibly ever get old, apparently. But maybe there's going to be more to the podcast than that. Maybe Haley will seriously try to assess other people's relationships, try to offer them advice, as Yahoo reported. And if that's the case, it's actually even more ridiculous. There is no universe in which a 21-year-old girl should be offering relationship advice to anyone for the simple reason that she doesn't have meaningful experience in adult relationships. As you know...
I mean, Matt, you do a show where you offer, like, parenting advice and relationship advice, and you don't really parent your kids, Matt. You've bragged about not knowing how to do laundry. Like, you don't do that. You leave it to your wife. You tell us this. You wrote a column once, Matt, about how if your son sexually abused your daughter, you wouldn't report it to the police because you wouldn't want to ruin his life. Like, and you still give parenting advice. Oh yeah, you guys don't know about this? I thought I'd talked about it before. Guys, Matt Walsh used to write for The Blaze. Here, let me pull this out. He wrote an article called "The Duggars Aren't Hypocrites, Progressives Are." Now, for those of you who do not remember, the Duggars, they were a reality television show household about a group of, well, a family, I guess. And how many kids were there? Let's see here. Oh my God. Yeah, this was a show called 19 Kids and Counting. About a family that just kept having children. And it was not... was very weird. Anyway, one of those children was Josh Duggar, and wouldn't you know it, there was a molestation controversy that wound up ending the show. Let's see. Yeah. A police report from 2006 was released to the public in Touch Weekly magazine, stating sexual molestation allegations against the Duggars' eldest son. And yeah, he was sexually touching his sisters. And genitals. So, you know, in response to that, also Josh Duggar was caught with a huge trove of child pornography, right? So, anyway, Matt Walsh wrote a defense column of Josh Duggar. A Christian failing to live up to his faith does not make him a hypocrite. It makes him cowardly, perhaps. It makes him selfish. It makes him flawed. It makes him sinful. By now, you probably heard that Josh Duggar, oldest son of the 19 Kids and Counting family, did some very bad things a long time ago. Apparently, when he was 14 and 15, Josh fondled several young girls, including a number of his younger sisters, and touched their genitals. After admitting to these acts, his parents presented the situation to the church's leadership, and Josh was sent to a family friend in Little Rock, where he spent several months doing physical labor. When he came home, his parents brought him to a state trooper. The trooper talked to the boy, but no arrest was made. A police report was filed, though, and Josh and his sisters received counseling. The behavior stopped there. By the way, the behavior didn't stop there, hence the child pornography, but, you know, whatever. Well, I'm just gonna scroll down here because he tries to defend Josh Duggar's behavior in a number of different ways. But the number 3 is really where it stands out. This is Matt Walsh. 3. I know I'm opening myself up to some serious criticism here, but let me be honest with you. If my own son, God forbid, came to me and admitted to doing what Josh Duggar did, I don't know that I'd immediately run to the cops. Would you? Is it really that simple? The decision to have your child arrested as a sex offender would be an automatic thing for you? Really? I guess I'm just a horrible person then. Yes. Yes, you are. If you know that your son is sexually assaulting your daughters and you choose not to report it, yeah, you're a monster. Weren't his sisters like 5 or something? Yes. There were 18 of siblings, so I assume a wide range of ages there. Yeah. So Matt Walsh is willing to write something like this and then go on to give parenting advice. And I just want you all to know that's insane. He has no high ground to stand on here.
Because I've complained about this many times in the past. This is a problem that is not specific to Haley Welsh. There has been a proliferation of people on social media and in podcasts giving relationship advice, despite the fact that they have no wisdom on the topic to impart at all. They have had no success in that area at all, and yet they're giving advice. So this is my opportunity to get back on my familiar soapbox once again to remind you that you should not listen to relationship advice or insight from anyone who does not have demonstrable success in the area of romantic relationships. This shouldn't be controversial. You know, if I told you not to listen to car maintenance advice from somebody who can't even change their own tire.
Also, I'm just going to throw this out there. You also probably shouldn't listen to relationship advice from a guy who thinks it's okay to sexually assault his own daughters. Like that's what he wrote in The Blaze, man. He wrote about that. He put his name on that article.
You would immediately agree. Same principle applies here. Almost all of these relationship podcasts are worthless.
Also, yeah, Matt is overlooking the core conceit of the Tuah podcast, which is that she's clearly hawk-twat enough, all right? She clearly knows what she's doing. That was a very quick answer she gave in that interview. I think a lot of people would trust her advice on hooking up. I think she has demonstrable success in that arena.
Worse than worthless, because they're run by people whose only experience with relationships is failing at them and who have not learned anything from the failures because they keep failing. And so it's not like they can give you advice based on, they can't tell you the things they learned the hard way because they haven't learned anything. Success in a romantic relationship means meeting someone, dating, getting engaged, getting married, and then staying married. Nobody is qualified to dispense advice on romance or relationships unless they have completed all of those steps. And even then, like 80% of the people who have completed all of those steps still probably don't have much to say of any value on the topic. That's just the reality. But
yes,
certainly we can say that everybody who has yet to complete the steps has nothing of value to say on the topic at all because they couldn't possibly.
You know, this is a really easy argument for Matt Walsh to make when not a single episode of that show is available. You know, like, not a single... You don't know. Like, the only clip you showed of her was from a Bill Maher podcast where she's getting asked questions about World War I, which I need to remind you is not a dating question. She might know an awful lot about dating. She might not know anything about World War I.
Now, I don't blame Haley for not being married yet. She's only 21, but that's the point. 21-year-olds have almost no experience being adults in the world. It's unlikely they have much wisdom to offer. I certainly didn't at that age. I doubt that Haley does The only notable thing that she's done is make a sex joke. But, you know, for now, her handlers are pretending that the sex joke is evidence that she's an interesting and brilliant person. In promoting this new podcast, Better Media says that, quote, Haley Welsh is a bona fide superstar, and her charisma, unique perspective, and innate connection with her audience makes her the perfect fit for our platform. Talk Tuah will bring a fresh and dynamic voice to our content lineup, and we can't wait for our audience and brand sponsors to connect with Haley in an authentic way that embodies the ethos of Better Media as a whole.
He's so
the ethos.
bitter.
So they're falling back on the corporate PR speak because they know there's no substance to any of this. The point of promoting this person is not to...
Dude, you dedicated an 11 and a half long minute segment on this to complaining about a random podcast launching that you think won't be very good. Again, you don't have the high ground on this one, my guy. Salmon and Trout, this is a almost 12-minute long segment about how an upcoming podcast that he doesn't care about, he thinks it's just not going to be very good with no evidence whatsoever. Like you couldn't even wait for the podcast to come out, Matt. You had to do it now.
Help anyone through their marital problems or give them guidance on finding a spouse or anything else. The point of promoting her is to turn her 15 minutes of fame into a lot of money. And if that means giving a lot of very bad advice to a young, impressionable audience, then that's what they'll do. And they'll do it as shamelessly as possible. And that is why...
Dude, Matt, that's like your entire shtick. Your entire shtick is like, hey, are you depressed? Don't go to the hospital. Just make the decision to not kill yourself, stupid. Like that's your advice to like depressed people. Like I don't think you give great life advice, Matt.
I'm afraid to say Haley Welsh, the Hawk Tuah girl, and everyone promoting her podcast and anyone involved in it, and anyone who listens to it, and just everybody, they're all today canceled.
Damn, Matt. Meanwhile, your best bud Ben Shapiro over at the Daily Wire, telling all of his all of the people in his audience that they need to get some of that
wet ass P word. P word is female genitalia.
You know, like they're being debauched over there. Amazing stuff from Matt Walsh.